This is Darius Arya for Digging History, Exploring Global Cultural Heritage. Today we're going to talk about the Colosseum. The Colosseum wasn't known as the Colosseum in antiquity. It was known as the Flavian Amphitheater, that is named after its builder, Vespasianus Flavius, who was the emperor after the suicide of Nero. He had been sent to put down a revolt in Judea with his elder son Titus, and afterwards, in the vacuum that was created with the death of Nero, his suicide, there were four people that claimed themselves as emperor, the winner being Vespasian. And when he marched back to Rome and declared himself emperor, he needed, among other things, to set up his dynasty and to have dynastic celebratory monuments for the conquest of Judea. And that's where the Flavian Amphitheater comes into being. Vespasianus Flavius needed to establish his dynasty. He had two sons. He was victorious general coming in from Judea. He had defeated the other emperors that claimed the throne in the year of the four emperors. As the winner coming into Rome, he needed dynastic monuments, he needed celebratory monuments, he needed victory monuments, and one of the great ones that he built was the new amphitheater that the city of Rome needed. So it was a practical monument. It was a dynastic monument, hence the name Flavius in the title. It was also something that he built as a crowning achievement to taking over the city and replaced much of the Domus Aurea. It was an enormous, sumptuous villa sprawling from the Appian to the valley of the Colosseum over towards the Palatine Hill. It was porticos and gardens. It was also a huge lake. The lake was already filled in with runoff water from the varying hills, augmented by an aqueduct line brought in by Nero. And at the top of the hill, on the Velia, which butted up against the Palatine Hill, where today we have the Arch of Titus, there was the Colossus of Nero, 120 feet high. This was something so magnificent that it was a wonder of the world, and it rivaled the Colossus of Rhodes. When you think about its scale and size, we must think of the Statue of Liberty, without the benefit of such a high pedestal as the Statue of Liberty has, but the statue size was the same. Vespasian is draining out the water of the Stagnum and replacing with massive foundations for his gigantic amphitheater. The previous amphitheater built by Nero was made of wood. It's time that Rome had another one, yet again, of stone. And what he sets out to do, he succeeds, but ultimately it's completed by his son Titus, and then Domitian, the world's largest amphitheater. The circumference is 545 meters. The height is 50 meters. The interior arena space is 89 by 56 meters, like a football field. And this could accommodate between 50 and 75,000 people. The ancient Romans had 87,000 people. Modern estimates usually put it down lower to 50 or 60,000 people. It held a lot of people. It was the main venue for what? For gladiatorial spectacles. So in the morning you had gladiators fighting against wild animals. In the noontime you had the execution of criminals, sometimes in wondrous ways. Stage sets were erected right from trap doors before your very eyes to set up and give you creative ways to persecute and kill criminals. Burning them alive, crucifying them, throwing them to the wild animals. All for your entertainment. Now the upper classes would usually go off for lunch, and this is what the lower classes would see. But ultimately in the afternoon everyone's back, and it's gladiators. Gladiators fighting in various styles from different parts of the empire. When they had the inaugural games, there are 10,000 gladiators fighting, usually in pairs, over 100 days of celebration. That's an extraordinary amount of gladiators fighting. They had to come from all over the empire. 10,000 animals were put to death. Again, it gives you an idea of the spectacle that was the Flavian Amphitheater, later known as the Colosseum. The architectural form of the amphitheater, where did it come from? It sounds like in Greek two amphitheaters, that's correct of course, but the shape is not the same. It's stretched out, it's elongated. Why is that? Because the first real serious consistent games in Rome that took place were in the Roman Forum, which has a long, narrow piazza. So when they set up the games, they set up wooden bleacher seats, and people would go into the stands, people would go into the upper floors of the basilicas and look down and see the gladiatorial games taking place, usually in conjunction with the death, the funeral of an important Roman citizen. The eulogy was also delivered in the Roman Forum on the rostra. So when you start to make this structure permanent stone. The first one in Rome is that of Statilius Taurus, somewhere near the ghetto, let's say, in the Campus Martius area. Then you get magnificent architecture, which really looks like the stone theaters that preceded them, of Pompey and of Marcellus, built by Augustus, and the theater of Balbus. So 3 theaters, stone, freestanding. And when you look at that architectural type, you can also see it very clearly in the later Colosseum. What kind of decoration did we have for the Flavian Amphitheater? On the interior, it was totally covered with marble. That marble has subsequently been stripped out for the most part. But the exterior was about 100,000 tons of travertine stone and then held together with about 100 tons, 300 tons of iron clamps, many of which are subsequently robbed out. In each arcade you had a statue on the upper floors. On the lower floors, for 80 arches, you had on the axes main entrances, but then over the rest of them, for 76 out of the 80, you had Roman numerals, so you knew where to enter to go to your seat. The seating system is very hierarchical, as was normal for the Romans. So the most important people were down below with the best seats. So that would be the senators. The emperor had his own box. And as you make your way up, you're less important and you have less wealth. You're a visiting ambassador, you're a member of a priestly college, you're one of the equites or the equestrian order. As you make your way further up, you're the plebs. You're the commoners, but people with some status, of course, and as you go up and up and up, the less status that you have, until you get to the shaded area with the colonnade at the top, and it's the nosebleed seats, and the seats are actually in wood, not in marble, and you're a slave having his day off, or you're a woman of no status. The entire floor of the arena was made of wood, and it was originally sustained by substructures in wood. What you see today in stone blocks of tuff and in brick are subsequent modifications for the trapdoor systems over hundreds and hundreds of years, most of which you see dates to 300 and beyond. But originally the floor was always covered with sand, and that word in Latin is harena. So from harena we get the word arena. What was sand good for? For hiding the trapdoors. What was sand good for? From absorbing all the muck and blood of the carnage. So we want to think about that for the Colosseum. This is entertainment, folks. This is to the death for animals, putting criminals to death for your entertainment, exacting justice, and ultimately the gladiators, well, they are professional fighters. They are meant to live and fight another day. Let's say statistically they have a 10% chance of dying, which is a lot if you have 10,000 gladiators fighting for 100 days of the inaugural games. But really these are champions, and those champions are owned by people, and those people want a return on their investment, and they want their champions to live to fight another day to make them more money. So it's not that every time gladiators go and fight that 1 out of 2 will die. That would be a very, very low return for your investment in training these gladiators. They were superstars, and they wanted to leave them superstars to live a long life. The average age of a professional gladiator in the arena is around 10 years.